on to part 2, which is actually building the bridges. And you remember that we spoke about 2 types of bridges. Last night in the introduction, you heard that. So the main bridge we're going to talk about now, these are bridges from you to the person. So how are you going to connect to a Muslim? And we'll give you many, many ideas. And afterwards, in the breaks, if there are Muslims you want to connect with that you don't have ideas of how to do it, just ask me or Brother George. Because what I've found is there are so many ways, it's like hundreds of ways, and God and the Holy Spirit can show you. But we'll tell you some of them. And the bridges will actually fit the situation of where you are, what's going on, what you're doing. And sometimes I will go out what I call fishing. And fishing is you're just making yourself available. I may combine it with errands I have to do, for example, in the city of Boulder. So maybe I've got to go do things there anyway, but I'm going to keep my eyes open and be ready and alert and see what happens, what comes my way. So I will call that fishing. And through fishing, I've met many people that I've carried on with. And I can give you many examples, but for example, here's a PhD from Saudi Arabia who I met in a coffee shop just out and got the courage, said, "Oh, assalamu alaikum." I was then invited to sit with her and make friends, and she was going to go back in maybe 4 months to Saudi Arabia, and she said to me, "I have to go back, but before I go, I want to learn about the Bible and Christianity." So we met regularly, and I taught her all the basic things that we teach to them that Muslims need to know about the Bible and Christianity. That was a few years ago. We are still on touch through social media. She was very interested, very open. To my knowledge, has not made a commitment yet. But that sort of thing happens, I won't say every day, but I'd like to say all the time. When I go out fishing, I meet people. So, and that's just daily activity. And what did Jesus say? In Matthew 14, I will make you fishers of men. So that's what you do with fishing. When you are fishing or you are in any situation where you are looking for doors, remember the goal. You're looking for what? A good connection that you can have with that person and eventually bring them the gospel or the Bible. And what helps a lot is to kind of get in your mind, if you can, how long am I going to have with this person? You kind of have to get a sense, ask the Holy Spirit to lead you. Am I just going to see this person one time and boom, I'll never see them again? Or is this a person I'm going to have an ongoing relationship with? For example, when I first met the woman here who's covered on the screen, I was on campus, it was New Year's, I was distributing some things, and when I saw her, I said, "Assalamu alaikum." I said a few things, and I was so happy to meet her, but I felt the Lord telling me at that point, you're going to have a relationship with her. At this point, I've known her about 15 years. So I knew I didn't have to rush or push. But if, like you see me talking to that young woman on campus, I had the feeling I would never see her again. So I had to get to the point where I could either present the path of the prophets, which you'll learn this afternoon, or give her a tract so that she would have that kind of closure, because that's our goal. So you see it, you really have to rely on the Holy Spirit, but sometimes you just know. If you're in a large-scale event and people are walking by fast, you know you're not going to see them again, most likely. If it's somebody at school or work or your neighbor, yeah, you're probably going to see them again. So the third key to remember is, what is that person like? As Margaret explained, you need to get to know the person a little bit. So especially if it's someone you're going to see more than one time. Remember Jesus, he is our model. And in several things, we will talk about our model in apologetics tomorrow. But today, the way he would approach people was different depending on who they were. Was it the woman at the well? Was it the Pharisees? Was it the crowd? So keep that in consideration. And if you've ever done writing or public speaking, they always tell you the same thing. Know your audience. Try to know who you're trying to connect with. Now, I'm just going to briefly mention this because we're not going to have time to cover outreaches. We had to limit so much to get into level 1 what we have. But some of you I know already do outreaches. I know that Jasvir and Belle, I'm not going to say your whole name here on the screen, but I know you guys do a lot of these outreaches, and the rest of you may have also. I know Margaret's done them with us too. So there's a little different style. Your bridge in that is mainly what you're saying to get them to take the material you're passing out. So that's different. So say you're new at this and you want to know, like many of the people we'll be speaking to online or that haven't done outreach of any kind with Muslims, where are you going to build bridges? Well, first, it can be with your personal contacts. Sometimes people come to these conferences because they already have contacts and they know who they want to speak with. And it could be your coworker. Sometimes people get referred to you. They will say, hey, my friend's a Muslim, would you meet them? So it might be through personal. For example, one of the women you saw before, with the one in the white outfit that I said I met on campus. Through her, I met so many other Muslims, people that were here from Saudi Arabia literally only for 2 days. And she would introduce them to me. And she would, in a way, ask me to share the gospel. We'll talk about that later with Path of the Prophets.
But she's now in full-time ministry.
Yes, and now she's in full-time ministry. So you will find if you meet, sometimes they call it in certain training a person of peace, but somebody who's well-connected or outgoing. That's not everyone. Most of the ones I meet are not that friendly, but even one of the students now I'm mentoring, a graduate student from Kuwait, is connecting me with another one who's a PhD student that we're going to go meet at School of Mines. Margaret and I are going in a couple days to meet with her. So you can get personal contacts from your Christian friends and from other Muslims you know. Always be open for that. If you're talking to your Muslim friends, you can always say, oh, I'd love to meet your parents when they come, or I'd love to meet so-and-so. So keep that in mind. Again, now this says around town. So I told you how fishing, I might go to an ethnic market, to stores to hang out, so places I know the students hang out, to coffee houses if it's in a Muslim neighborhood or any kind of ethnic group you're reaching to. You can go where they are. Festivals or events, we'll go through that in more detail. Campuses, you can go to events there, you can offer to tutor, you can just hang out. And I will tell you one of the best ways when we get to specifics. And on mission trips. In our ministry, we don't emphasize mission trips. We do short-term missions. We do train others. We have 150 trained pastors overseas in India, praise God, that we're working with. But our main emphasis is America. Partly why? Almost no one is doing it. And we have the most opportunity here to reach all kinds of groups, like George presented last night. So we sometimes do mission trips within America, and we can help set you up on these if you want to. I like to say, as a doctor, and Bernie and other doctors watching can relate to this, other medical people like Ethna, be on call. Just keep that in your mind. If you're serious about doing this, have some situational awareness. Be alert. Like my daughter knew when we would go to Sam's Club or something, any place we would go, that I was always alert looking for Muslims. So sometimes she would say, Mom, there's a Muslim over there. She would, and I would say, well, they're too far away, but if God wants us to meet, he'll bring it back. And lo and behold, they'd be next to us in the checkout line. So you have...
Fish.
What? Is there somebody outside, or you're talking about the...
grocery store, there's a fish.
Oh, fish. So just look for doors. Colossians 4:3 says, pray for doors, and then pray that I will have boldness. That's Paul's request, that's mine. Now, a lot of you, or not that many of you know me maybe, but now people think I'm very outgoing. Not really the way it was. I mean, if you pray, God changes you. So I read in the Bible, it said pray for the gifts, and one of them was evangelism. So I prayed for that, and then I got more outgoing. Partly it's older and being more secure in my skin, and partly you just get to the point where if I do this for God, if this is what he wants me to do, it's the audience of one, and if I end up doing something stupid or making a mistake, it's okay. There's a verse that says we can do nothing against the truth, only for the truth. And so that I feel like, okay, if I goof up, it's not going to be the end. God can make good out of everything. So you kind of probably already have the idea of this slide. You need to adapt your bridges to the situation you're in, the season of the year, and the culture you're in. So now we're going to look at some examples of bridges. And this is a list of what we're going to go through. You have that list there, and there are many more. But already we talked about the smile, magic word you're going to learn, conversation, Esther bridge, the food bridge, holiday bridges, family bridge, shopping bridge, gift bridges, helper bridges, campus bridges, the mentor bridge, being salt and light, your appearance, and the cross bridge. This is very selective, so you'll have to pay attention to that one. And a fun bridge. Events, we have general events, men's events, women's events, advice bridge, which can also be tricky. And you will probably come up with some of your own. So first, we do have an Arabic speaker in the audience. And what I have found helps with every Muslim of basically any background, whatever language, since to them Arabic is the holy language. There is a word that lets them connect with you immediately. George, would you like to say it for them and coach our friends?
Assalamu alaikum.
Okay, say it again and then they can...
Assalamu alaikum. Repeat. They know it.
Oh, some of them know the answer. Well, let's just do the opening right now. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. And how many of you, I think most people in here have already heard that, right? Is it new for anyone? If it's new for you, then we have tomorrow an hour signed up for lab time and workshops. So any of the things that you need to work on with us, you can do then, or ask questions in the break. But when you say Assalamu alaikum, you are letting them know several really important things. First is you come in peace. It means peace be upon you and your people. It's for those of you that study languages, you know that it's plural. It's you guys, or y'all. Those of us who lived in the South, it's like peace upon y'all. So it's that kind of saying. So you're not just saying, I bring you peace. You're saying, I bring peace to you and your family and those in Islam. And so usually they're really shocked that any non-Muslim says that to them. And culturally, they must return it. That will be wa alaikum salam. So that will be and upon you. But you don't need to learn that at this point because we're not asking you to say that. We're asking you to be the instigator and to say assalamu alaikum. That's what we're asking you to do. Also be aware that there are regional variants. So like in Jordan, they said salami when I was there, like what you would eat. So there are different ways of saying it. But I can hardly explain how it totally turns the conversation, and they're so happy that someone cares about them, especially traditional American background people. So once you've got their attention with your word, your magic word, don't like freak out, oh, now what do I do, right? Because then you have to get into some kind of conversation. And there are ways that you can relate, and I'm trying to make it super easy for you now so you have no panic when you meet them. what will you say? So in advance, you can think about these things. What topics might be natural, and what interests do you have that might overlap with the Muslims? For example, food, that you like food from their country. Maybe they're Pakistani and you like Pakistani and Indian food. Or you like the clothes they're wearing, or their children did something cute. These things happen all the time where there's somebody who actually stops in front of you or looks at you, and there's already a bridge because it's like the angel tapped on their shoulder and said, look over there, and smile. So there, you've got that. You have their attention somehow. You said your magic word. What can you talk about? We're going to talk about small talk conversation and big talk. And we do have videos on this online if you need a review, and it will be in your manual. If we think about it, you really already know a lot of this stuff. You know, small talk is what? The weather, where you are, what you're doing, the situation you're in, and even a shared suffering. For example, you may be in line at the market. I've met several. An Indonesian student from Harvard that I was in line in front of at a coffee shop. We started talking and stayed in touch for years. And what you can say is, wow, this is a long line, isn't it? It's natural, right? Or you're somewhere and it's hot, and it's like, oh, this is a hot day. So you're making a very neutral, short observation that maybe it's a shared suffering that you both have. So those are small talk ideas, even with such silly small things, which can be difficult for people like Luke, who presented this morning. He will say, the small talk is hard for me. I like the big talk. And for other people, the big talk is hard. But you will find that it's these little things that you can start conversations and relationships, and they even open a door for the future. So if you don't connect well with this beginning, it might actually close a door, like you see there. So small talk is of value. Then we get into big talk. This is Brother E at UC Berkeley speaking with some students. And they were, at this point when I took the picture, they were deep into discussing issues about Islam and salvation. So we do eventually want to get to the big talk issues, but we might have to go through the small things first. So think about big talk. Take a look at those for a second. For example, if you are at work with someone or you're in the community, there may be some important issues that you have to deal with at work, or things going on in the community that you can talk to people about. These are not necessarily Christian things, but they're important things. And the psychologists tell us that important things and even crises, even if you disagree with someone, that can lead to bonding. So one of the things I've found is helpful is morality. Some of my students have called me, they're just totally overwhelmed by what seems to be American immorality to them, especially on campus. I've had many discussions on them. A lot of drinking and the sleeping around and the way people dress. So that's actually a serious and common thing that you can bridge not only to that person in your relationship, but it can also help you get on to talk about spiritual things. And well, really, the Bible doesn't teach that for Christians. We have some morality things in common with you. And you can talk about health. Sometimes if someone's really ill, you pray for them, and that can open a door. And we've done that many times. You will see healings, very possibly, or at least you'll hear of them. And religion is a big talk issue. We will come up to that when we are talking about bridging to the gospel. So this is to help you with your big talk bridge. I am now proclaiming you all students of Islam and culture. Okay, you're here so you are interested in the customs and holidays of Muslim people all over the globe. And you can say that you took a course, which this is. You took a course on whatever, Palm Project, you don't have to tell them the name, but they told you to ask questions. So I'm telling you to ask questions, and you can use this as a bridge that, I took a course, I learned a lot of things, but I'd like to know your opinion. And you will see a bridge coming up really soon where that will be perfect. So as far as discussion bridges, I'm going to skip this. We'll talk about it tomorrow. The other thing that you can try to remember in your brain is that you combine bridges. So you've done your magic word. Usually, like the first 3 bridges are, you do your magic word, you do some small talk, and then boom, I suggest you go into what we call the Esther bridge. And the Esther bridge is where we use Queen Esther as our example. Do you remember in the Bible when there was a crisis and she had an important message, did she walk right up to the king and tell him the whole message? No. What did she do? She invited him out, right. She invited him for 3 banquets, and finally she got to her important message. But she was building a bridge, and she used food and friendship and having a good time. She probably had dancing girls and magic tricks at these banquets. She put on a good show. So this is what we are encouraging you to do, is to set the atmosphere and wait for the right moment to present important things. But especially, remember going back to, we said, try to figure out how much time you have. After you've said your magic word in small talk and you've said, I'm really interested in culture from your country, then you're going to do your Esther bridge. Would you meet with me sometime? Could we meet, or maybe go for coffee, or something like that? Or you can invite them to an event. You can say, we're having an event. But if you invite them to something personal, it goes much better. I will say, for example, I was doing a holiday outreach, you'll hear about those soon, on a campus, and there was a woman like in black, all covered, more than we usually see with campus students. And even at my stage, I sometimes have to be brave, so I went up to her and said, of course, Assalamu alaikum, and I would say, a happy blank. I'm not going to say which holiday, but I did have a holiday and a holiday tract for that. Did my magic word small talk, and I got to Esther right away. I said, would you like to meet sometime for coffee or something? And you know what she said? Yes. Yeah, and she said, sure, there's a coffee place right there. All right. Okay, it happened right away. And that was maybe, let's see, how old is her daughter? So that was maybe 7 years ago. She had just come here from Syria as a refugee. Her English wasn't good. She was pregnant. She married a guy who was very strict Muslim, and I think it was not, they kind of like met over the internet, wasn't totally happy. And later, years later, she said, I'm sorry I have been delayed in talking to you, but I will never forget you. You were the light in my darkness. Okay, guys, you were the light in my darkness. So I met with her, it's been less regular, I met with her again when I was in Northern California in May, I think. And she's not a Christian yet. I can't say they all become Christians, but for her, that she was needy in America, and a Christian gathered up the courage to go up to her and give the magic word, do a little conversation, and the Esther Bridge. From then we started meeting regularly. I tutored her, of all things, if you can believe, in critical thinking, which is like so not part of Islam. And so I used that to help develop her. So anyway, the Esther Bridge, I can't underestimate how important that is. So if you at least learn those 3 things, magic word, small talk, Esther Bridge. And here, this is another example of Esther Bridge in Dearborn. I met this Muslim couple at a big event there, the festival, and did the Esther Bridge. They came out with us, and Brother E was there, and so he did the Arabic, I did the English, and we had a chance to share the gospel. So a lot of times the idea of asking someone out is if you have a big group, there is a lot of peer pressure. And I've noticed, so around here, if I go to a coffee shop and there are a lot of them, they're going to be less open. George, am I totally right on this, Joy? You know, they're less open when they're in a group. But if you can get them alone with you, yeah, the peer pressure is extreme. So if you can get them to meet with you separately, that is good. And I suggest start with something simple, like coffee or tea. And then maybe you can move to a meal or have them to your house or something like that. So that leads to what we call the food bridge. And for that, besides going out, sometimes you can have them over for food. You can share meals. They will cook for you, you will cook for them if you can keep it halal. And these are several people that we've done food bridges with. It's worked really well. Even sometimes you can share recipes. Now, probably this is my favorite bridge outside of, you know, the magic word, small talk, Esther combination. The holiday bridges. And you have a list there of different kinds of bridges. And these two covered women with their picture in front of the Christmas tree, they are both Christians now. And
they're not covered anymore.
They're not covered, very uncovered. And one of them, we pray for her. I can give you her name off screen. But we are sponsoring her and her son to go back to Saudi Arabia to share the gospel with her family there. So pray for that. And I think one of the people watching online is going to Saudi in a few months. So things that we do here do make a difference over there. Should I digress? I think I have a minute. In fact, one of them, when she called her sister, the one we're sponsoring to go back the first time since she's been a Christian, when she called her sister there and explained that she had become a Christian and the situation, her sister said, "Yes, I always knew Islam was wrong." And what I love about the story that this sister, you know, her name begins with an N, that she told, what I love about it is a few months before that, I had been in London networking with the group that was distributing our booklets, okay? It was Crew. And they were giving out Bibles in London. Then we had these students from Saudi Arabia coming to where we are. So I went from London back to California. In California, these students heard the gospel and then shared with the sister. The sister, Sister Ann, had a cousin that had been in London that summer and got a Bible. Wow. So she asked that cousin, I think you got a Bible when you were in London. Could I take a look at it? And the cousin said, well, what would you want that for? And she very coolly said, well, I'm just interested. So my point is that's full circle. You know, most of the time what we do is we do a lot of outreach, fishing, distributing. We don't always see all of the corners come together. But I really like that because that will show you that you may be part of that circle here, okay? You may be part of it, but you don't usually know what's happening to the rest of the circle. But we believe that God works in everyone's life to bring them to Him. So holiday bridges are good for discussion. It bridges automatically to something. For example, St. Patrick's Day. Wow, you tell the story of St. Patrick. He was a slave. And also there's the shamrock. We'll talk about how to use the shamrock tomorrow. You can give gifts. The gifts often might include some tract. It's a very efficient use of your time. What I like about doing a wide-scale outreach on a holiday, and our group does all of the American holidays and many of the international ones. It's efficient because you're giving things out for the holiday. You're saying like, Happy Thanksgiving or Happy New Year. But then when we see someone that we specifically want to speak to, maybe from a Muslim country, or sometimes if we're doing Chinese outreach, Chinese, they are not feeling targeted because it's part of your general holiday outreach. But you can slow down and talk to them, you see. So you can quit giving it to all the blondes going by and saying, oh, you're from Saudi Arabia. I'd really like to talk to you. I have a few questions, that kind of thing. So, and also you meet so many more people. If I go and walk around campus for, say, St. Patrick's Day, I can meet many more than if I'm just sitting in a coffee shop. And then there are ways to use that holiday to bridge to the gospel or truth or start a relationship. So holiday bridges, Dr. Cynthia's big thing. Remember those, especially in America. So you can use, at the holiday bridge, you can use your Esther bridge. You can invite people to holiday events or holiday trips or to your home. There are a lot of Muslims here that really want to go to a home for Thanksgiving. They will say, I never had an American Thanksgiving. Or I would love to go to a Christmas party. There you can see I had several Muslims for a Christmas party at my home. Not only that, you're making memories for them, so every time that holiday comes around, they're remembering. Like one of them that I took to church on Easter actually agreed to go, and then we did an egg hunt. Always remembered that. And in fact, love was one of the favorite songs was Christ the Lord is risen today, from a strong Muslim. So you're making memories. Easter is a good one. These are some Muslims that we had. Of course, Easter is a great door for sharing the gospel. Now, other holidays that we can look at are interfaith and international holidays. So this is something that they understand from their perspective that we can bridge from. In an area with a lot of Indians, we use Diwali, some people call it Deepavali, which is the festival of light. And through that, you can teach Jesus as the light of the world. So we will do distributions for that or talk to them about it. The Asian New Year, we usually call it Chinese New Year, but a lot of other nations celebrate it. We do outreaches for that. The Sikh Nagar Kirtan Parade, which one of our members here, a couple of them here, have actually helped with. And Persian Nowruz. There's a picture out there of a lot of girls belly dancing that we took at a Nowruz festival, and I think Joy can probably confirm. You know, there's this, you see the Arabs in the Arab festival all covered, and some even have the face covered. And then you go to the Persian festival, is a totally different atmosphere. So we tend to do both. So here are pictures of some.
Is also celebrated with the Kurdish people.
It's over abroad and Afghanistan, over the whole Persian world. So they may spell it or say it slightly differently, but for example, this is in Boulder, there's a Nowruz festival, and these are people from Tajikistan that are in that same area. We also did an outreach for Nowruz a couple of times to Afghan communities. And this one with the woman in the mask, that's a Nowruz parade in San Jose. And then these other happy people, it's Nowruz. And the thing about Nowruz that's good is it has become secular. Yeah, it has Zoroastrian origins, but nowadays it's mainly just a spring celebration. For my Persian friends, they have this Hafsin table where they put the 7 important symbolic things. And one is a book. If you're Muslim, it's the Quran, but it can also be the Bible. Or if you're atheist, it can be a book of poetry. So that is a good holiday to always keep in mind. It's spring, so it changes a bit. Then specific Muslim holidays that we find really important to connect to are Ramadan. Raise your hands if you haven't heard of it, but have you heard of Ramadan? Okay. Have you heard of Eid al-Fitr? Okay, and Eid al-Adha. So we will be talking about how to use Adha and Fitr later in our apologetics. But the point being, you can even, I mean, you can go to Ramadan events in the community. You can have people to your house, like this Libyan family that I had over for a Ramadan party at my house. Then you can do general things like New Year, national holidays for whatever country you're in or people group. Valentine's Day, of course, is great because that's sharing God's love. Okay, so now we'll touch on holidays a little bit more as we come through examples of other bridges. What Margaret mentioned about having a natural gospel is at some point, especially if you're sure they're not terrorists. I mean, when we talked about risk versus benefits earlier, you have to decide how much of your personal information are you going to give out. I'm usually kind of careful with my last name. I mean, I know I've been on bad guy lists, and I'm 90% sure my phone was tapped by one of the organizations. So you want to be a little careful, but over the years I've become perhaps less careful because most of the people that are willing to speak to me are already a little open because Islam says, do not make friends of Christians and Jews, okay? So if they are willing to be my friend, unless I can tell they're totally bad, it's usually a good thing. So, ask the Lord to show you, we're taking some risks, yes. But as we just did on one of our videos about hockey, the kind of risk you take to play hockey, it's very low risk that we take in America. So with that idea of sharing some of your personal life, when you're comfortable, you can use your family. Do you have?
Yeah. How did you know your phone was tapped? Or what?
Well, I can talk about that later. See, I know he's listening. Heard that. So the family bridge is at the right point, you can bring in your family. Okay, especially if you know they're not going to be too huge a stumbling block. So I've done that, and you can talk about what you're doing with your family because all of this helps them to feel the sense of community that Muslims value more than we do, and let them know that they're loved, and let them know also what is a Christian family like. And if there are problems in your family, I mean, you don't air all your dirty laundry, but you might say, well, to kind of downplay it, but yeah, that family member isn't friendly with us anymore, or something like that. But it's very good to involve others when you're into relationship and what I call pre-discipleship. We'll talk a little bit about that. We don't have a full pre-discipleship lesson, but we'll talk about it with Salt Shaker. Another bridge is shopping. This you might think mainly for women, but also for men. Depends on what kind of things you're looking for. Maybe for auto parts or whatever. Yeah, actually that's coming up. Don't laugh too much. So by shopping with students, spending opens a door. When you're shopping, remember you can meet Muslims, as has happened with me many times. Or as part of building a relationship, you can take a Muslim with you to your favorite shop. So all of those things are good about shopping. In some closed countries, I have done what I call shop dropping, where you can't distribute legally, but sometimes you can discreetly leave a tract under a dish or something. I'm sure you guys have done that, so don't look shocked. Gift bridges. You can give gifts for holidays, events. You will find out that strict Muslims don't celebrate birthdays. I do have one on my list because the Prophet Muhammad didn't celebrate it. If he didn't, we shouldn't. So they say, no, instead we have Eid al-Fitr. But they have Eid al-Fitr. It's like their Christmas holiday. So, but we can still give them birthday gifts. I've done that anyway, or especially for their child. And if there's new baby, here's a shower we had for an Afghan family. You might have been to that one. The helper bridge is one that we can... that we can use a lot, because especially with refugees, and in this picture, these two young men were working with our ministry. One of them was with us full-time, the other did an internship. Sometimes we have interns coming from overseas. And they were working in this Muslim community and providing a lot of help, and the whole family came to the Lord. So the helper bridge is a little tricky. One of my friends expressed frustration that I feel like I'm just always helping and never getting to teach them. So you do have to put some boundaries. As I said with the Afghan, a woman who was too demanding, I have to let her know what is reasonable help to expect. And then you have to look at your life, how much time you have, or the volunteers that work with you, and hopefully somewhere you're getting to the goals. So these are examples of some things you can do that help. You can fix things like computers or handyman. You can provide rides, babysitting, groceries, yard. You can bring food, or you could even hire a DoorDash if somebody's been sick or just had a baby. You can give advice on things that you know about, medicine or sewing or taxes. One of our workers, Brother E, has helped a lot of Iraqis and Palestinians and things like that with paperwork. There's a huge amount of paperwork. Another one of our board members has helped them a lot with Afghanistan. Again, you have to put some limits on it, but it is a way to build bridges. And tutoring, I've done a lot.
Bank account is often.
What?
Opening a bank account is often a good start when
to help them. Yeah. So if you're really interested in refugee work, we were going to have a talk on that. That got canceled because our speaker couldn't make it. But if you are in that community, you can ask us questions on how to do that. Tutoring, I've found really good. A lot of people, either from school or just community-wise, that if you're in a community where they're all together, like whether it's all Afghans or Iraqis or something else, if you can meet with those people to teach them some English, let them practice with you informally. It doesn't even have to be regularly. Also, you can use flashcards or give them flashcards. I will often do for like the alphabet, so that these poor moms who probably sometimes can't even read or write their own language, you're giving them Joy knows, you're giving them a heads up for some literacy. Okay, and then you can be an auntie or an uncle to an orphan or an elder. George has done that a lot. Joy too, I think. On campus, we talked about how you can talk to your classmates that you already have, or if you're an adult, you could take a course. In this particular setting, another volunteer and I we volunteered in the language center. These were all Arabs trying to learn English at a language center. So you can volunteer like that. Salt and light bridges. Now we will talk about the salt shaker method tomorrow, but salt and light bridges are just you being the salt of the earth, being pleasant to be around, having a good attitude, being eager to do good works. And this is what most Christians are hoping was just going to change the world. People are going to look at me, I'm such a good Christian, they're going to admire me, and they're going to ask what I believe and come to church. How many of you have ever had anybody say anything like that to you? So we do hear that all the time from, we hear it from people from all over the world that we're working with in relationship, and that is our salt and light bridge, but we're not having them come to us saying, let me be your friend, let me learn from you, let me, unless they're looking for money and services like some of the refugees are. So, but yes, so because you were pleasant and you had a good attitude and you did all of that, you were a salt and light bridge, but you were also aware and doing other things. But when we teach this for India, for example, Sometimes that's all you can be in certain countries. And a lot of our workers are highly persecuted, threatened now by Hindus and Muslims. It's scary. So you may be in some parts of the world, like George and Joy have been a lot, where just your salt and light is the only bridge you've got. And you can, for example, be thankful. Remember, everywhere you go, Jesus told us to work for the kingdom. And working for the kingdom, Jesus said, share your smile with everyone. You bless everyone you come across. So it's not always preaching, but you may thank people for something they did for you, or you do something nice for them. I have thank you packs I give out every day that have a coffee card and a You Are Loved tract, which I will show you. But that is the primary bridge I use now anyway. If there's some connection with someone, or in the market or the restaurant or whatever, I at least give them that. I'm also prepared with the green booklet and a coffee card in case I come into Muslims. So I just always have that. I'm prepared, as that says. Being at work, wherever you are, be honest. And this is what happens in Christian countries. The Christians, in non-Christian countries, the Christians there tell me, like for example, one of our volunteers from Jordan who translated our material into Arabic says, the people tell us there they'd rather work with Christian companies because they trust us more. So I'm sure you see that in the Middle East. And I hear this also from Egypt and other places. But still, even in America, you can let your lives shine.
Especially businesses like to hire Christian accountants.
Ah, good one.
Or Jewish.
Okay. Maybe the appearance bridge is something that you can keep in mind. I've basically had to change my lifestyle and what I wear because especially if I know I might be running into Muslims or if I know I'm on outreach. So with your appearance bridge, this is men and women, your smile is always in style. And there's a cute song from a musical, You're Never Fully Dressed Without a Smile. Anybody see Annie? And they say it doesn't matter what you look like as long as you smile. Well, I do think it kind of matters. So you should at least be clean. If you're doing it a lot, you want to know what is offensive and not offensive to Muslims. I have my Dr. C's guide to 4 out of 5. It will be in your manual. For women, if you can do 4 out of the 5 modesty things, it's okay if you fail a little one, but you can't fail them all. Okay, what I like to do personally, because dress is a big deal with women, is dress in a way that's acceptable to them, but maybe tweak them a little bit. Like if they have to wear a sleeve down to here, maybe I'll wear my sleeve up to here, so they would think, yeah, that would be good. Just a little like, ooh, I like that. I could kind of imagine myself doing it. But if I show up in a mini skirt, sleeveless, low cut, they're just going to think, bad person.
It's actually quite a big problem.
Yeah.
Because when they convert, they think they can just wear the mini skirts and
exactly.
go to the beach with a bikini and feel free.
That's what we cover in our discipleship class, because then you have to, when you've had so many rules and you don't have them, then it's like, okay, well, what rules, are there any rules? No rules. Christ sets us free. So that is a big topic. And also, if we are going through here in these days, we have one open class tomorrow afternoon. And we're allowing you to vote on what you would most like. So you can think about it. There's a list on your schedule there of things you could choose. Or if you just want to have more question and answer. But here's a verse, 1 Samuel 16:7. I think everybody here knows that. And we usually emphasize from that verse that the Lord what? The Lord looks on the heart. So that the heart is what's important. So growing up as a Christian, you always remember, don't look at a book by its cover, look inside, go by what's in the heart. But we have to remember the first part of that. People look at the outward appearance. Muslims are extremely appearance-oriented. That's what they see. And so flip that verse around and you get the idea of why it's important. That God looks on the heart, He looks on their heart, He looks on your heart. But dress is important. So we dress for success. I say for people that like costume drama, these outreaches are really good. So you will get an example of some of what we do. These are doing Indian dress for Indian outreach. And remember 1 Corinthians 9:22, where Paul said, I try to find common ground with everyone, doing everything I can to save some. And that's New Living Translation. But the idea is, what's going to make them comfortable? Here's the picture that you saw previously. But one person, when I asked them for to start a relationship, a year or more later, they said to me, when you walked up to me, I thought it was a little crazy, but I thought you looked pretty. So I agreed. In other words, I didn't look threatening. I was smiling. I looked nice. And that was so because of the appearance bridge, they were open to the Esther bridge. We talk about different occasions. So when you're with different people, you may wear different things, especially if it's for an event. So if I'm just going out with a Muslim student, I won't necessarily wear an outfit from Jordan like I'm wearing here, a dress from Jordan. But again, to suit the event. These are on short-term missions. This is the way some of us have dressed on short-term missions, so you can see various ideas. I only wore that scarf to go into the mosque. I usually don't with Muslims.
What did you say? I'm sorry.
There's a scarf. I'm wearing a scarf here.
But you said,
I wore it because we went into the mosque.
I see.
But I don't usually wear a scarf. If I'm overseas in a country where I have to, I would. But usually around Muslims, I might wear a scarf over my shoulders, but I don't do hijab thing, unless there's a special reason. Chinese and Japanese, we also, remember, we reach out to as many ethnic groups in America as we can. And so sometimes we do Chinese New Year's parades or Japanese events. And here you see, actually that's Margaret with me. I'm sorry that Dr. Naomi's picture got on sideways. I didn't have time to change it for the new PowerPoint. But this is for a Chinese event, and guys, you can call it cultural appropriation, but I'll let you know, we're planning to see Macbeth in town in a couple nights. The two main actors are black. So if they can do Scottish king, then I can wear a black wig to connect with Chinese. So when I was blonde, I didn't get very good receptivity at the Chinese parade, and also here. They actually have idols in this temple. Okay, but when I put on the black wig and wore my black glasses, I got great reception and said, ni hao. So, it works. And then also people, they feel respected. Like you see, this was at a tea ceremony. And the people giving the tea ceremony, they feel respected because I'm wearing a Japanese hori. So these are just some holidays. This silly, stupid-looking outfit I wore for Halloween. I mean, it's a fool for Christ. But because of that, in that exact place I was, the person who took that picture has now been my student for 4 to 5 years, and she's connecting us with the woman that we're going to meet in a few days. So, yeah, you get attention, but your appearance can be a bridge. And I'm telling you, on days where you don't feel good, yeah, you may not really be able to do it. But sometimes, personally, I never feel like doing an outreach. I always feel sick that day, and I know where it's coming from, so I just kind of rebuke it and go on. But these things are helpful. Like, here's the St. Patrick's Day. I am wearing shamrocks Do you think I have a problem explaining the Trinity when I'm wearing shamrocks? It's like, look, it's one thing, but it's got 3 lobes. So we'll talk more about that tomorrow. Now we come to the cross bridge. This is really tricky. And I'll tell you why, because I've been to a lot of Muslim seminars. I'm not just regurgitating stuff that other Christians have told me. I read the original sources, and I go to Islamic institutes and Muslim Student Association meetings. Well, in one of them, put on by a large Islamic institute in California, they were explaining. Again, we talked last night about hell being more like purgatory. You can get out of it if you really believe Muhammad is the messenger and you've said Shahada. But what is the one thing you can't get out of hell for? Shirk. You know, if the worst sin is to believe that Jesus died on the cross and he saves. That's the worst sin. And what they told me in that institute is if you die with a cross on, you have no chance ever of getting out of hell. So because I know the cross is such a big deal with Muslims, I don't wear it except in very rare occasions because I don't want them to look at me and say, shirk, haram, you're going to hell. Even though most of them don't think that, that is the pure teaching from the Sunni Institute that's related to Al-Azhar in Egypt, the top. So when you wear a cross, you really have to think about it. Now, recently, a famous sports hero went to Saudi and he wore a cross. And he made a big statement with it, and that was probably good.
Who was it, you said?
The sports, what was the guy? I think he was a basketball player. About a month ago, he wore a huge diamond cross.
Lebanon went with his bishops to meet the king, and they all had huge crosses.
And they had their crosses. So if there's, but you know, they were patriarchs. But I'm saying, like if I go to Saudi, I'm probably not going to wear a cross. But you know where I have worn it? In the Medina, in the marketplaces, where I don't get arrested. But if I know my only testimony to all these people here will be my smile bridge and the cross I'm wearing, they're going to know where that comes from, okay? So if you can't talk to people, you don't know their language, and all you can do is legally wear a cross, it's okay. But usually if I'm on outreach with Muslims in America, I don't, because we like to use the Lamb of God analogy because the cross is just too distracting. You don't want them having antagonistic thoughts. So that's why it's a wild card. I should actually put in here the cross bridge is a wild card. Now the fun bridge, fun, you might have heard, fun, it binds people together. So when you're in relationship, you might want to have fun with people. Here you see Muslims from Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, Syria, and we've found ways to have fun with them because that's part of bonding. This one is now an international leader who's with our board member Joanna, who's now in heaven, but was a lot of fun. And then Brother E, when he prays on outreach before God, he will always end it with, "And may we have a wonderful time." And that was so strange to me at first. I thought, this is serious. We're doing the Lord's work, spreading the kingdom, fighting the darkness and spiritual warfare. But he was right. And we've had several people say to us, that's the best time I've ever had. Wow. So you know that's a good bond. This is another example of places we've taken people on with fun bridges, Disneyland, skiing, San Francisco. Sometimes you might take them if you've got local people. We've sent groups of students up to the Rocky Mountains, things like that. Now we'll talk about event bridges. And this is like a big category like holiday bridges because there are so many events. Maybe at a festival, like we've had booths at Boulder Creek Festival, national and religious festivals for Muslims and Sikhs. Or you may go to hear a speaker or an open presentation. Parades we do a lot of, so these are kind of open outreach. You might go to a certain kind of show, like I went to an Afghan show on University of California campus and met people there. There may be entertainment, an exhibit, a church event, which means you can go to their events, or you can go to secular events and meet people, or you can invite them to your events. This shows us at this is the Punjabi festival. I don't think Jasper was at this one, but that was a booth we had at the festival. And then the top page is an Arab festival. Another event that we have done is to have a backyard Bible club in an ethnic neighborhood in the summer. So that's where we had in a neighborhood with a lot of Indian children. We had a Bible club. I believe they do this in Dearborn. So if you're in an ethnic group, it's a really good idea. You can ask your children's minister at your church how to do it, but it's a lot of fun. Events, another kind of event would be an open lecture. This is at the School of Mines, Colorado School of Mines, which is an engineering school. And sometimes we are asked, or you can be asked by a campus Christian group like Ratio Christi or Cru or some other one to give a presentation. And so what we do at that, I'm not the only one who does it, but you invite everyone to come, the Muslims. So in a way, you're speaking to that student group, but you've got Muslims coming. And so that is a way to connect with them. You might present your material a little differently so that it's less harsh. And usually by the time you do this, you're more experienced if you're going to give the presentation. But we've also partnered with some campus groups in California to do like an on-campus Christmas party. So you can do that. There are lectures and debates. Debates can actually be a good bridge because when the debate is over, you can say to the person, well, what did you think about that? Or you can bring people with you. Or this on the right is a breast cancer lecture I gave in Jordan. Interfaith presentations, especially if you get known in a community, you might be asked to speak. And let me tell you, this is such a weird thing because people in my Northern California community where I've lived, they're always saying, oh, we can't do what you do. We're going to make enemies. We're going to offend people. And yet, the irony is, when they want a Christian to represent our faith, or they will come to us because they know I care. And I'm friends with the doctors, Dr. Bernie, who's online with us. He knows some of them, the Sikh doctors there with many of the people. And they always know I love them. Yeah, they know I stand for Jesus, but in a good way. So when they have like a memorial service if a bunch of Sikhs are killed, or if they're doing, this was for Guru Nanak's 500th anniversary, I was the only Christian that they had on that panel. So don't give in to that stumbling block or that fear. I should put that on the list of stumbling blocks. You're going to offend people. Okay, because we do our work with a smile and with love, they trust us. Sometimes you can set up a temporary clinic. This one we did overseas, but you could do it in a Muslim area. And especially if you have medical people. And what's kind of ironic to me, and I don't think it's just because of who I am, a large percentage of our volunteers are medical, doctors and nurses. So this is a kind of outreach that suits us. We've talked about parades, a variety of parades. This shows you Chinese and Punjabi parades. And a kind of event I mentioned, a secular event. This was another board member who's praising God in heaven now. She and I went to the Persian event, I think it was Shah Abbas, at the British Museum, thinking we're probably going to meet Persians here. So you see what kind of a fishing that is? It's a fishing outreach, and sure enough we did. Here you see Barbie sharing with this Persian man exactly what is out there. It's a Persian Gospel of John. So it can be a secular event that you just show up and God connects you with people. This was another secular event where actually I reached out to this woman in the airport. We were both flying or something, and she invited me to a speech she was making. She was from a governing council in Iraq. And so I went there, and then she bridged me to someone else who was in national leadership in Islam. So these may be meetings that aren't your meetings, but you go, and even if you're afraid, you just pray, Lord, you open the door. I don't know what's going to happen. And you see the power work. This is an event bridge that I have come to see is actually pretty good. I think you can use it two ways. One is sometimes you will be invited to a wedding and you can participate. The other way, which can be done almost any time and really helps bind you to people, is to ask about, oh, in your country, how do they do weddings? You were with me a month ago and we did that, remember? Our Afghan friend pulled out her album to show the wedding pictures that she had. And then here you see from multiple other weddings, people are sending this to me from Sudan, India, Turkey. So if you're like, oh, what am I going to talk about? Especially this is for women. You can ask about what do they do for weddings. Now for guys, you might be able to find something analogous that men like to do. Now, here's another picture of Margaret. She was there in the Chinese picture. We have, as an adjunct to our way of sharing the gospel, which you'll learn next, the path of the prophets. One of the many ways we use that is with an event. And Lord willing, we'll do a few scenes from that tonight so you can see how the bilingual drama goes, not the whole thing. But we have done this now in 2 countries, in 6 states. What I like about this is you get people to come, a lot of the times just because it's in Arabic too, and English, and they come and they hear the whole gospel. Usually when you're talking with Muslims, they're not going to listen for your whole presentation, but we can talk about exceptions to that. But what I like about this is they get the whole gospel from Adam through Acts chapter 2, and they hear it. And they hear it twice, because if they are learning English, they're hearing it in English and in Arabic. We've also done it in English and Dari for Afghans. It's been done in English and French for French speakers, and French and Arabic. That was probably our hardest. But so if you are in a community with a lot of a certain language group, you can produce this in your community or overseas. Those of you that go overseas to Muslim areas, consider doing this bilingual drama.
This guy in the big beard.
Oh, do you recognize
Of
him?
course.
We
Also,
did.
He borrowed George's bathrobe, which has never come home. That's our son.
Is that George's robe he's wearing?
Yeah.
Egyptian.
It looked so good there in this. Yeah, this is George's son, Andre. We did a video of this in English and French, only some scenes, but we used it as promo for our trip to France. And Andre did a fantastic job. He was the servant of Abraham. So we don't have to talk about it more later. I will tell you that in Islam, you can't have the prophet himself on stage. That's haram, disrespectful. So our board member who wrote this drama did really a great job of having the people near the male prophet. So we don't have Adam, we have Eve. We don't have Noah, we have Noah's wife. We don't have Abraham, we have the servant of Abraham who tells what he saw. And so we do that all the way through. We don't even have Jesus, we have Peter. So this drama, because this person had worked in Islam a long time, knew the ways to say things, and we've adapted it. It's a lot of work to put these on. As I said, we've toured with it several times. And then we had COVID, so we canceled our German trip. But I still believe in it. It's a lot of work, but if there's a group that wants it and is willing to give us some support locally, we might consider it again. Then parties. Yes, parties are a good event that you can bridge to invite people to, either from the school or seasonal. We've talked about holidays, birthdays. And what I'm saying on this slide about bridges is when you have a group, if you're including non-Muslims and Muslims, that is often a good idea, especially if your non-Muslims are Christians, because they give them another idea of what Christians are like, and then they don't feel as targeted. So if you're having people over to your house, sometimes you might want to have another Christian or a family member, so it's not just the Muslims. It's just an idea. These are examples of some parties which we've used to share the gospel. That a Christmas party that we did as Bling and Shine. I think Joy came to the follow-up of this, where we used the Star of Bethlehem and the silver nativity set so they could hear the prophecies and hear the Christmas story. I've used this on more than 1 year, even though we just had the one party. But yeah, then they learn about these things, otherwise they wouldn't. We're going to talk about women's and men's activities. So for women's activities, we've had dance parties. They call it rakas sharak. It's kind of scandalous, but it's belly dancing. So we've had multiple Arab women come. And what we say is no weapons, no alcohol, no men. And then they kind of laugh, and they come, they take off their hijab, and here you see some kind of people that you can't recognize at our belly dancing parties. And also many people have done henna parties. I have a flyer over here for a henna party that was done. Yeah, and some of the henna you can even use to put a little gospel message in while you're telling it. In USA, we don't do this as much, but I have spoken to a Bangladeshi Muslim sewing group in Hamtramck that one of our Christian friends supervises. And in India, of course, they do that. Now, for men's activities, you guys are probably going to be better about telling me. But sports, you can invite them over or you can participate with them in different kinds of sports. This volunteer, Mark, also in heaven now, former board member, in case you're getting the idea that we have lost a lot of people in this ministry, our best ones, sometimes I look around and I think, why are George and I still alive? What's going on here? We've lost so many good workers. But he shared workout. He was enjoyed with that and bonded to one of the families that we mutually know, one of the young men that through it. So you can look for other shared interest. One thing that we have also used is target shooting. And I know a group in Texas has used gun shooting. This is bows and arrows. And I was kind of shocked when I heard that they do rifle shooting. But hey, you've got to know that these guys aren't terrorists. And in Texas, people use guns, right? So that's kind of an interesting thing. And yeah, the guy with the white arm is an American participant. He's not the Muslim, but... And you can be involved in projects, support groups, maybe a building project. You guys can think of ideas. So that concludes part 2. And this will be your homework. That will be in your manual. I don't know if you might have it in that handout, but there. Now, that was the end of part 2, but let me follow up with just a little of part 3, since Margaret finished a little earlier. I will try to give you, these are not specific bridges, these are more things about how to work it. For example, the advice bridge is really tricky. Probably especially the women will be asked to give advice, but the men too. Yeah, actually the men will be asked, like Brother E was asked, how do I marry an American so I can get a green card? That you will get asked that, believe it or not. They're not going to ask me that. They didn't ask it when I was in the room. But they were out shooting baskets together, sports bridge. And I was there. And he said, you know what this guy asked me, sister? So, then you're going to have to figure out how you answer that kind of question. But you may have some ideas you can give advice about. You might be addressing something you know about, like how to go to the doctor. You might be getting questions about people struggling with our lifestyle or their lifestyle there, or their families, or the pressure from their group. A lot of the women I've worked with will say, I don't want to hang out with the Arab women. They're all spying on me and reporting home. So you get these kinds of things. And before I mentioned morality, fears, and a lot of women's problems. We do have a short women's problems seminar tomorrow. But what I'm asking you to remember with this is you are not a professional, okay? Be careful, know your limits. You don't know what's beyond you. So don't pretend that you know everything. Just be open to say, I don't know that. I can get back to you, or actually I do have this contact who knows. So to finish up here, for strong bridges, you share your life. If you meet a need somehow, that will help. And if you teach and help them learn, those will make your bridges strong. And I have the Bible verses for those. What things will ruin your bridges? Bust them. We mentioned dress. Another thing, judgmentalism. Was out with another worker one day, and the college student was telling us both that his father had 2 or 3 wives, and this other worker said, that's wrong. That's just wrong. And of course we agree with that, but I was kind of shocked to hear it. And I know God uses everything. I've seen him use stupid things this person said before, and other people have said. But, in general, we try not to be too judgmental. When the time comes, we can talk to them, like we said, about challenging falsehood. And if behavior between sexes can be very putting off, so be careful how you behave with the other sex. Like when we would go out, if Brother E would talk to the women, just ask them some questions. Even they call the campus police, or they call other Muslims to come up and defend the poor woman. So just be careful about that. The other thing is pushing too soon. I was shocked when a Christian that I was working with pushed a Muslim who was staying with me for the week, pushed that person, actually women staying with me, into trying to make a prayer to receive Christ. She didn't want to, and she kind of stopped praying partway through, and I was like shocked. I would never tell you to do that. I told you yesterday, only when people have already told me they believe all these things, and I feel like the Holy Spirit's leading me, I will say, so do you want to become a Christian? Anyway, that backfired. That was 10 years ago or more. That person is still not a Christian. So don't push too soon. I do want you to know you might have to work on making time to make bridges. Okay, it's got to be a top priority for you. Any kind of outreach, you're going to have to cut some things. You're going to have to be flexible. And I meet a lot of people who say they want to do it, but they're not willing to reorganize their life to make time to do it. It's got to be really high up there, or things happen. I guarantee you things happen. So simplify where you can. Life is not simple. I have like 10 things going on this morning, but still we can keep our focus on, you know what, we need to do this. And if you can afford it, you might work part-time or retire early. That's just something to think about. And here's your homework. So voila, I think that's also in your manual. And just what I'm saying here is, hey, these were ideas. Some of them might work for you, some of them might not. But adapt, use what you feel is best for you.